Great Lakes of East Africa. A jewel in the African crown.
This is just incredible. Straight away you can see why this part of Africa has drawn people for thousands and thousands of years.
It's an area dominated by the largest tropical lake in the world, Lake Victoria.
Even from up here, its scale is hard to grasp, but the fertility of the land around is clear to see.
For centuries, people have fished these plentiful waters and cultivated the rich soil. But such abundance has brought with it strife. This region has been the site of intense rivalry and great power struggles. And it's a place whose history is still shrouded by legend and myth. We know less about Africa's past than almost anywhere else on Earth. But the scarcity of written records doesn't mean Africa lacks history. That can be found in the artifacts, culture, and in the traditions of the people. In this series, I'm exploring some of the most vibrant histories in the world. I've come to Uganda to find out how centuries of conflict have shaped this region of Africa. This is a tale of two kingdoms, a story of rivalry, of warfare, of opportunism. For over 200 years, the kingdoms of Bunyoro and Buganda jostled for position, competing for valuable resources and using history and mythology to make a claim on the land. For centuries, the interior of East Africa was unknown to the Western world. But that changed in the 1860s, thanks to a geographical puzzle that had been the obsession of Europeans for decades. The European adventurers were all desperate to claim the glory that would come with the supposed discovery of one particular place. The accolade went to a young British soldier named John Hanning Speke. In 1862, he claimed he had discovered the source of the River Nile.
Right now we are going to the source, where the source of the Nile begins from.
Speke had searched East Africa for 6 years, hoping to solve the mystery of where the Nile began. He was finally able to tell the outside world that the River Nile flowed out of Lake Victoria. A guide, James Bukoma, is taking me to the spot where the water starts its 4,132-mile journey to the Mediterranean. So this is the source of the Nile, James?
This is the real point where the Nile gets the water from the lake. This is exactly where the Nile begins.
This is the source?
Here.
But the significance of Speke's adventure went far beyond the confirmation of where the Nile began. His journal is the earliest first-hand account of Buganda, the kingdom he found here. His excitement is plain from his description of Buganda's king, Mutesa I. A more theatrical sight I never saw. The king, a good-looking tall young man, was sitting on a red blanket, scrupulously well-dressed in a new mbugu. On his neck was a very neat ornament. Not a fault could be found with the taste of his getting up. The writing might sound condescending today, but European adventurers provided historians with valuable testimony. It's easy to question the methods and motives of explorers like Speke today. But I do think that they were amazed by the sophistication of the kingdoms that they encountered here in this region. Speke was captivated by the beauty of the landscape. But it was Buganda itself that was perhaps the biggest surprise to him. He'd stumbled upon an advanced kingdom with complex structures of government. It had a road network, established trade, and an organized and well-armed military. At the end of the 19th century, Buganda's power was reflected in a map drawn up by the British. It recognized Buganda's dominant position on the northwestern shores of Lake Victoria, overshadowing its neighbor, the Kingdom of Bunyoro, just half its size and on the banks of Lake Albert. Today, both kingdoms are provincial powers within the modern state of Uganda. But the country's capital, Kampala, is Buganda's traditional power base. And the current king's palace overlooks the city from a prominent hilltop, as his predecessors did. The fact that Uganda gets its name from Buganda shows the kingdom's historic influence, but it doesn't tell the full story. Buganda established itself at the expense of its neighbor, Bunyoro. 400 years ago, it was Bunyoro which was the region's major power, while Buganda was then an insignificant group of lakeside communities. Somehow, the Bugandans managed to turn the tables on Bunyoro, displace it as the most powerful kingdom in this part of Africa.
To understand how Buganda came to oust Bunyoro, you have to know more of the history of Bunyoro itself.
I want to find out how Bunyoro first became a major power, and then how Buganda overtook it so dramatically. I'm traveling to Hoima, the Bunyoro capital.
Compared to Kampala, Hoima is a fairly modest place. But when Bunyoro was at its height in the 17th century, this was a major trading centre.
It may be hard to see now, but 400 years ago, Bunyoro was a place of considerable political, religious, and economic significance. Yulamu Nsamba is a court historian and the private secretary to the current king of Bunyoro.
Bunyoro was powerful as a trading country. Hoima was a market town. There used to be a king's market here. It was quite a busy place. And goods sold used to be locally made and also from long distance trade. There was a long distance trade route from Lake Albert through the Sudan to Cairo and beyond. In fact, there were several markets scattered all over the kingdom, and there would be routes linking them.
And how did Bunyoro actually build on its economic successes?
Well, Bunyoro built on its economic successes in terms of expansion, in terms of building an infrastructure. It was a big organized state, although the borders kept on shifting. We know that from the clan affiliations and the scattering of the clans. You find that Bunyoro's clans are in places as far away as southern Tanzania.
So there was a kind of political sophistication that had never really existed before in this region.
Yes, there was for sure.
The clan chiefs were the recognized custodians of the land. As a result, they wielded significant power. So Bunyoro needed strong kings to keep them in check and to keep the kingdom stable.
This is the throne room of the kings.
The palace throne room is filled with objects designed to make the monarch the focus of the kingdom and to underline the history of its ascent.
When a king sits here, for the first time, he's handed a number of articles to signify what his office is all about. One of the articles he's handed is a traditional hammer. That puts him in office as a head of all the metal workers in his kingdom. He is also handed a traditional hoe. And the message is, encourage your subjects to grow food. People should not starve. That's why you are a king.
So all of these different things that they tell a particular kind of story, or they each add a different element to the story of Bunyoro.
Each item here has a story to tell.
The hoe, the hammer, the iron spears, they indicate aspects of the kingdom's power. But underpinning it all was something much greater.
The kingdom of Bunyoro reached its height during the course of the 16th and 17th centuries, and it did so in part due to one crucial factor. Bunyoro claimed that it was directly descended from an ancient empire more powerful than any other in the region.
It was called Kitara. According to oral history, Kitara had been a vast empire ruled by a powerful dynasty known as the Twezi. Historians still disagree about whether Kitara or its Twezi rulers ever existed. But even today, the people of Bunyoro revere the Twezi as gods. Every week, dozens of people from towns and villages throughout the region travel to worship at a Twezi shrine. I've joined them on their pilgrimage to Mabendi Hill. This sacred tree stands on what some believe to have been an ancient Twezi settlement.
Within each one of these buttresses is a different sub-shrine. I think each one of these sub-shrines is dedicated to a different kind of prayer.
The presiding spirit of the shrine is a Twezi matriarch named Nakayima. Worshippers make offerings of money, coffee beans and milk as they ask for answers to their prayers.
This obviously really matters to people. I mean, the potency of this. This isn't a tradition frozen in aspect. This is still alive and well and celebrated.
Since the earliest days of the Bunyoro kingdom in the 15th century, there seems to have been a strong belief in the Twezi, whether or not they ever existed.
There are those who think that they are real people who existed in this part of the region, which was called Kitara. But other interpretations also refer to the Batwezi as spirits, because their legacy was perpetrated through the worship of the Batwezi cult, which is what we are now witnessing.
Dr. Ephraim Kamuhangari has researched the Twezi dynasty.
What's the significance of this Twezi ritual to the success of Bunyoro?
It is the strength of the religion that actually boosted the political claim of the new rulers.
So it legitimizes them?
Yes, yes.
This relationship with ancient Twezi?
The relationship is the legitimacy they claimed from the former rulers of Kitara that actually strengthened their control over the new kingdom of Bunyoro.
Bunyoro's claim to such an illustrious pedigree was vital. It gave its people a proud heritage, and it meant the kingdom could assert control over the land once ruled by Kitara. The fact that the Twezi were regarded as otherworldly gave Bunyoro a spiritual foundation. That belief continues to resonate.
And this place is obviously still very special. Even in modern history, people have sought to make a connection with this place. And today, it obviously still means an awful lot to a lot of people.
Faith in the Twezi has lasted over the centuries for good reason. There's physical evidence that suggests the predecessors of Bunyoro may not be figments of the imagination. The Uganda Museum is one of the oldest in East Africa. It houses a range of extraordinary artifacts. Some historians say they prove the existence of the Twezi. They may also cast light on the early days of Bunyoro. I persuaded the curator, Jacqueline Nyirachiza, to show me some of the treasures that fill the shelves behind the scenes.
Okay, this is the store, archaeologist store.
Oh, Jackie, I love places like this.
The contents of these boxes all come from a place called Ntuzi. It was a vast settlement, and possibly the home of the Twezi. Some even say that Ntuzi was the capital of the legendary kingdom of Kitara.
And how old is this, Jackie?
We think that it's like 700 years ago.
700?
Yeah, because these sites have been in existence like 700 to 900 years ago.
I mean, the glorious thing about it is that you can see how someone has pushed into the still drying surface a piece of cloth.
And
it gives a sense.
This must be street roulette, yes, which is still dated in the same period.
Yes. I mean, I just have this thing about ceramics. I mean, this idea that someone actually created and used this thing which should have been quite humble, but it's just absolutely exquisitely beautiful. Gives you a real sense of what ordinary people's lives were like during this period. Because for so much African history, you don't get a sense of the ordinary. It's the kings, it's the powerful, but this is just beautiful.
Along with the pottery, beads and iron spearheads have also been recovered. The finds reveal that the predecessors of Bunyoro had themselves developed an advanced civilization.
These were complex cultures. These are water vases, but also that these are very, very sophisticated vessels, some of them. Some of them used for storage, for foods that would have meant that people travelled, that they traded. And this just gives us a small insight into Ntuzi.
The civilization at Ntuzi would have been a significant foundation for the kingdom of Bunyoro. But Ntuzi also provides evidence for the secret of Bunyoro's success, the reason it became the most powerful kingdom in the region. I'm heading to Ntuzi to see it for myself. Ntuzi lies in the grasslands of central Uganda, 95 miles south of Bunyoro's capital, Hoima.
This region isn't in Bunyoro, according to modern maps, but at its height, this whole area belonged to the Bunyoro kingdom.
And it was here, at a time when most historians thought Kitara and their Twezi rulers was simply a myth, that a discovery was made that forced them to reconsider.
When archaeologists began excavating these sites in the 1920s, they couldn't quite believe what they were unearthing. An ancient organised society that dated back 1,000 years.
Hidden underneath the dense vegetation are important clues to the foundations of the Bunyoro kingdom. Archaeologist Dismas Ongwen has carried out excavations at this site.
Everywhere you move, you see the archaeology of the area. And everywhere you go, you find either iron slug like this, you find pottery. Yeah, just look over here. You find there's massive evidence of pottery.
There are artifacts strewn for miles around. But archaeologists were fascinated to find a dense concentration of material at two ancient rubbish dumps.
Getting old. Too old for this.
In oral history, they're referred to as the male and female mounds. for reasons that remain a bit of a mystery.
Some people think it's a female mound because it was the female dumping the rubbish here, and some academia people think that it's basically the female mound because it's smaller than the male mound. In Africa, people think that being big is being a male.
And what was the bulk of the material found here?
We have pottery, we have bones, we have iron artifacts, we have beads.
Archaeologists can tell from the volume and age of the material that this area was densely populated from the 11th century to around the 1400s. That dates Ntuzi to just before Bunyoro is thought to have been established. It also coincides with their putative predecessors, the Twezi.
Yeah, this is a proper example of the archaeology of the area.
But some of the most significant finds aren't man-made.
Just look at this, it's a big piece of bone.
And they've been revealed to archaeologists almost by accident.
If you look at it from what is happening here, the running water is actually eroding up the topsoil and it's leaving the archaeology. And I'm pretty sure that much of it has been washed off. So the water erosion is actually exposing the archaeology of the area.
The erosion has uncovered the centuries-old remains of cattle among the pottery and other objects.
It's quite amazing. Yeah, there's quite a lot of cattle bones around here. And you find all mixed up. Jaws, teeth, horns, and it's everything.
It is very special just picking up something like this that may have been part of a herd of cattle, perhaps 800 or 1,000 years ago, that actually moved across this landscape. I mean, obviously it's changed a lot, but not so much. I mean, there are still people here working with cattle. It's just very special.
The presence of cattle bones here is hugely significant. It gives a clear indication of the wealth of Ntuzi society, which the kingdom of Bunyoro is likely to have inherited. The animal bones also tell archaeologists a great deal about the lives of the people.
First of all, these were cattle herders, and they are looking after cattle in big numbers. And actually, if you look at some of the bones that we find around, we find there is evidence that they were actually slaughtering the younger bulls. That means they were doing it selectively, maybe to promote a particular breed of animals that they had. So these people were actually very smart in what they are doing.
Most communities in East Africa at this time would have shared just 1 or 2 cows. Evidence at Ntuzi shows that Bunyoro's predecessors had vast numbers of cattle. It might explain why a belief endured in the kingdom that the Twezi had been great providers. Bunyoro continued the pastoral tradition that had been established in the centuries before the kingdom's rise to power. They probably would have been tending herds of a breed like these Ankoli cattle. The extraordinary volume of livestock made Bunyoro unusual.
There was a reason why Bunyoro could maintain vast herds of cattle. The Bunyoro had a mineral that was vital for the welfare of people and cattle alike. The Bunyoro had salt.
Lake Albert sits on the western edge of modern Uganda. According to legend,